I can smell cannabis. The 4 words: you're sitting in your car or you're walking down the street and a police officer steps up to you and says 4 words: I can smell cannabis. And in that moment, whatever happens in the next 30 seconds, you are going to do one of 2 things. You're either going to protect yourself calmly, legally, without giving anything away, or you're going to hand that officer a search and maybe a whole lot more that they may not actually have been entitled to take. Most people in that moment do the wrong thing. They panic, they start explaining themselves, they get angry and start arguing. Or, and this is the most common of all, they just sort of shrug and let it happen because they assume that once an officer says the magic word cannabis, they've got no choice. And here is the single most important thing I can tell you today, the thing that almost nobody knows. A smell on its own is not the truth. A smell alone isn't supposed to be enough. Not according to me, according to the police's own rules. So stay with me because by the end of this, you'll know exactly what the law really says and the calm words to use the moment you hear I can smell cannabis. I'm Oliver Bennett. I'm a criminal defense solicitor here in England and Wales. 15 years of standing next to people at the worst moments of their lives. And I can tell you that the smell of cannabis stop is one of the most common encounters there is, and one of the most misunderstood. People have handed away their rights and sometimes their liberty over it simply because nobody ever told them the truth. So let me be the one who does. Let me make this real with a scene because it happens exactly like this. Picture how people get it wrong, the Danny mistake. Young man, call him Danny, driving home in the evening. He's done nothing wrong. He's pulled over for something minor, a brake light, and the officer comes to the window, leans in and says, I can smell cannabis in the car. Now, maybe there's a smell, maybe there isn't. Maybe it's the bloke Danny gave a lift to an hour ago. Maybe it's the air freshener, maybe it's nothing. But Danny panics. He starts babbling. No, I don't smoke. Well, my mate does, but not in here, I swear. And in 30 seconds of nervous talking, Danny has done the officer's whole job for him. He's confirmed cannabis is a thing in his world. He's made himself look guilty, and he's about to be turned out onto the pavement and searched in front of everyone on the strength of a sniff. Danny didn't do anything illegal, but he handed away every advantage he had because nobody ever told him that the smell on its own was the weakest card in the officer's hand, not the strongest. This video is so you're never Danny. Let's start with what this actually is because you need to understand the power before you can understand its limits. The police do have a power to search you for drugs. It comes from something called Section 23 of the Misuse of Drugs. The power S.23 Misuse of Drugs Act. And like the everyday search power, it works on one thing: reasonable grounds to suspect that you're in possession of a controlled drug. Reasonable grounds. We come back to those 2 words again and again on this channel because they are the hinge that reasonable grounds, and what they can't be, everything turns on. The officer has to have a real objective reason to suspect you specifically are carrying drugs. And exactly as with any search, that reason cannot be based on your race, your age, the way you're dressed, or the fact that you happen to be somewhere they consider dodgy. It has to be something real. So the whole question becomes, is I can smell cannabis on its own a good enough reason? And this is where it gets genuinely surprising because the answer, according to the police's own national guidance, is no. Let me say that again slowly because it is the heart of this whole video and it is the thing they are banking on you not knowing. The College of Policing, which sets the professional standards that officers are trained to, its guidance is clear that the smell of the police's own rule, smell alone isn't grounds. Cannabis alone is not enough on its own to give reasonable grounds for a search. It is, in their words, not good practice for an officer to base a search on any single factor in isolation, and that includes smell. This isn't some fringe legal theory of mine. The Metropolitan Police have had it in their own policy since 2013 that the smell of cannabis alone is insufficient. The police watchdog back in 2022 recommended the same thing. An independent scrutiny panel said it again in 2024. Some forces have gone as far as formally training their officers that the smell of cannabis is not by itself a justifiable reason to stop and search anyone. So, when an officer leans in and acts as though the word cannabis is a skeleton key that opens you up to a search, their own rulebook disagrees with them. Now, I have to be scrupulous